Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Now this morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Edward Elgar Publishing, an independent family business that publish a lot of academic work. This particular book is very important. It's about China, and they have in fact produced quite a lot of work recently about matters pertaining to Chinese legal issues. This one is called Company Law in China. There's the title of it. It's got a subtitle, Regulation of Business Organizations in a Socialist Market Economy. That's the spine, and that's the back of the book, which you can see there. It's been written by Jiangyu Wang, who is an expert in this area, and he's actually associate professor in the Faculty of Law at the National University of Singapore. Now the book is what you would expect it to be from Edward Elgar. You've got an index at the back. I'm working backwards as usual. You've got an extremely detailed bibliography. This is a very valuable book, I think, for many reasons. You've got paragraph numbering at the sides, and you've got some detailed footnotes, all extremely useful for what we need when we're looking at this particular subject. That's the front of it. And then you've got a contents page there. You've also got a very useful foreword, which is always worth reading because you get some idea of what this book is really all about. I do like the use of abbreviations, which I think is very helpful in certainly matters of this nature, because again, when you're dealing with many other countries, they will have their own abbreviations, and sometimes we won't not quite know what they are. And then there's an overview at the start, which I think is of some help as well. It's altogether a very good book. And we've written a review. My wife Elizabeth and I produced a review which is on the web and in some of the journals. And we've given it this title. We've called it A Critical Introduction to the Law of Business Organizations in China. And this is what we say. Written with clarity and erudition, this newly published book from Edward Elgar should provide an invaluable work of reference for practitioners, academics, and certainly investors interested in or wishing to enhance their understanding of Chinese law, and company law in particular. And again, as it says in the subheading, and within the socialist market economy framework. Writing in the foreword, Professor Tan Cheng Han of the Faculty of Law at the National University of Singapore points out rather surprisingly that although China is a socialist state in which all economic activities were once owned and run by the state, and in which corporations initially did not exist, quote, the corporation is now the dominant business vehicle in China. And it's illuminating to read or to be reminded by the author, Professor Jiangyu Wang, who's also from the National University of Singapore, as I mentioned earlier, of the chain of events and processes which brought all this about and which have allowed China to emerge as a major economic power in the wake of the reforms initiated by its former leader, the late Deng Xiaoping. Now, China's unique social and political history in the context of its economic development is also discussed in detail, so I think it will be of some use to people studying foreign affairs, political affairs and economic affairs, in addition to the legal aspects. The first chapter gives an overview, as I've indicated, and it covers these and related points by way of introduction to the types of companies in China before dealing with such topics as legal personality, limited liability, the formation of companies, the rights of shareholders, the fiduciary duties of directors and managers, and general corporate governance. Also covered in the book are financial affairs, mergers, acquisitions and takeovers, corporate dissolution, liquidation, bankruptcy and so on, and of course much more. So all the usual suspects, if you like, are there within our understanding of what we call corporate governance, or I actually call it company law, here in England and Wales. According to Wang, the book evolved from the development of his course entitled Chinese Corporate and Securities Law, as well as other courses he taught at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. he and his students decided that what was needed in this complex area was a text in English that would function as a critical introduction to the fundamental principles and rules of China's corporate law regime, placed in the context, of course, of China's overall social and economic realities. And a brilliant text it is too, in our opinion. My students, says Tang, have always been the driving force behind the writing of this book. And in fact, I think that's the case with many of these academic tomes, and I say that as both a teacher and as a barrister. Wang not only covers a wide spectrum of topics pertaining to Chinese law, he also offers an interesting perspective on corporate law in general. And in the words of Han, the malleable nature of corporate law as it takes root in a socialist market economy. Politicians, policymakers and economists, as I've indicated earlier, as well as legal practitioners, might like to take note of this, because I think it's actually a book that a general reader might find helpful, bearing in mind the power and position of China on the world stage. Let me say finally that it's meticulously footnoted throughout, as I've said, and the book also provides a no less than 17-page bibliography at the back, which I indicated, with references in English plus extensive index information right at the back, which again is helpful when you're looking for some very specific area, if you're doing research, for instance. What a boon to researchers in Chinese law this is, and thank you to all concerned. The publication date is 2014. Let me just remind you that's what the book looks like again. You can see again, I've come to the middle of it. Again, you can see we've got the paragraph numbering and you've got the footnotes. You've got a lot of information. As I say, I've always liked the bibliographical stuff because that's very helpful, especially when you're doing research into very sort of technical areas or detailed areas. And again, just to show the index, which I'm always like to show indexes because they do help. Then there's actually quite a nice commentary about the book on the back from David Donald. Anyway, I'm very pleased with this book. Thank you to all concerned, especially Edward Elgar, for continuing to produce these useful books in this area of law. I think it was a great contribution as we get towards the middle of this decade, and so thanks to all. Bye-bye for now. Bye.